So the painting that we're going to be making today, for that painting we're going to be using this limited palette of Mont Marte paints that I get at Amazon.com. This is the composition and the implied lines, and then we're going to be working on 9" by 12" watercolor painting paper. So let's get started with sketching it out first. I'm just going to use a very regular pencil, nothing special. Just drawing out those center lines just so I can figure out roughly where the composition is gonna go. Draw that all super lightly so that you can erase it later, or so that it doesn't shine through your paint later. Just sketching everything out here. Alright, so let's start with painting. First of all, the brush that I'm grabbing here is a number 9 brush. I buy those from Blick Art Materials, and they're Royal and Langnickel brushes. They're not super expensive, but they're decent brushes, and they hold up pretty much for one school year, I find, and then maybe a little bit longer sometimes. It depends a little bit on how hard everybody is on the brushes, but you have to realize that a lot of people are using the brushes for a whole year. So I'm taking some of the lighter blue, I believe that's a cerulean blue, and mixing that with a little bit of white. I don't like to mix it perfectly because I like that variation in whites and blues, so it's not perfectly, super blue sky or something like that. Having a little bit of a mix and variation makes it actually look better. We're not necessarily going for a hyper realistic or super realistic painting here. I would say it's a little bit more on the impressionistic side of things, and as you can see, I just skipped forward here because basically I just filled in that whole area. I left it a little open where the palm tree is, just because I wanted to be able to see where those leaves were going to go, and we'll fill that in later anyway. Now I'm just fixing some of the coloring, and then I'm adding some of the clouds, and the way I do that is just by adding some white. Typically the top of the clouds is a little lighter than the bottom of the clouds, so the first few times that I put the brush down and I kind of dab it on there, I get the most amount of white, and then as I dab more below it, that's where it kind of mixes a little bit more with the blue that's underneath it, so that gives you a little bit more depth. Definitely don't use paint strokes, definitely use dabs, and I do that for almost the whole painting. It's rare that I really put in big brush strokes unless it's for like bigger areas like that sky, or later for maybe the beach. So now I'm laying in the ocean. For the ocean, I use that lighter blue mixed with a little bit of that yellow. I might have grabbed, I also grabbed a little bit of that darker blue just to again create that little bit of variation here and there, a little bit of pure white to give some like the heads on the waves, and just go for that variation. Don't try to make the ocean just one color. There's the whole lot of variation in color based on the depth and what's on the bottom of the ocean, etc. Sand gives that lighter blue, so just kind of like a greenish blue. And then I fix a little bit of the sky as well, just to create a little bit more contrast with the ocean. And it's all little dabs that I do. Adding a little yellow there, just to create that kind of like greenish blue. Great, so now we're going to go into the sand. So I'm taking the yellow ochre, that's a darker yellow, it's an earth tone, and I add a little bit of white to it. Now again, there should be a lot of variation because the sand's not all the same, and there's going to be little dents in it or whatever. So dab that. Don't mix it all perfectly. Here and there a little lighter with the white. Here and there a little bit more with the ochre. And we're going to add other colors to it later as well, just to make it a little bit more interesting. But for now, we got to fill that area, so I'm just going to be doing that, just filling that in. So here you can see a step forward. I've done that a little bit. Again, this is definitely not the end product of the sand, but it gives you a good base. And now I'm just painting in that the beach chair there. That was orange. And that's just an impression. It's not a precise thing. I don't try to put in any details. It's, for all intents and purposes, 2 lines. And the same really with that the person there. I'm using a little bit of the burnt sienna to paint her in, and then her hair I'm not doing with black. I'm just mixing burnt sienna with a little bit of the darker blue to get a darker tone. Then I'm adding a little bit of a lighter, well, first the bikini, I just used some blue for that, and then I'm using some lighter whites and stuff as well, white mixed with the burnt sienna to create a little bit of the highlights on her body. And here I'm just fixing the chair a little bit, adding a little bit white here and there. Then I'm fixing the background because I had a little bit of white still there where I left some space. So I'm going to fill that in so that I have no white spaces around her. Adding a little bit of shading also, just very simple lines on that, a few highlights on that chair. And for that, I'm using a number 3 round brush. So now I'm going to paint in those little sun covers, sun huts, whatever you want to call them. This I'm dabbing and I'm using the edge of my flat brush, and the flat brush I'm using there is a number 5, and they're all of that same brand, Royal and Langnickel, that I buy at Blick Art Supplies. And they come in bulk for the classroom. So then I'm adding a little bit of the burnt sienna to it, and here with this one, this one in the picture is a little bit, it gets a little bit more light, so a little bit more burnt sienna. And I'm going to add a little bit of white as well to give a few highlights from the sun where it's hitting it, just like that. So then I skipped forward a little bit, but again I put some more beach chairs in there, just very simple, just a couple of, wide line and narrow line just for the indication. It's just an impression, nothing detailed. Now I'm putting in a little bit of shading around that tree that I haven't quite finished painting yet. And the shading, for shading I am using a little bit of blue mixed with the sand color, so that it means that I have some ochre in there, the yellow ochre, a little bit of white to mix that to get the sand color, and then adding a little bit of the darker blue to it, just to give it that little bit of shading. And be careful not to put too much blue in there. You just want to give it. And the reason why I'm using blue is because it's ultimately it offsets the sky and the ocean as well, so it seems to fit well. Now I'm just adding the leaves to that palm tree there. I'm mixing yellow with the darker blue. Again, not mixing perfectly because I want some yellow highlights. I want really a variation of like darks and yellows and of blues, yellows, and greens. I don't want it all to be perfect, the same green. A few more beach chairs, very small, almost just 2 little lines. A little bit of a highlight here and there for where the base of the chairs is, and that's about that. Now mixing a little bit of the darker blue with the burnt sienna to get something dark, like a darker shade. Again, trying to avoid blacks and stuff like that. Adding a little white for a highlight. I wasn't quite happy with that one. It's a little too blue, too perfect, so I'm just playing with that a little bit. Adding a few more palm trees that are going to be in the background with the same kind of dark shade of dark blue and burnt sienna. And now I'm adding a little bit of white for a highlight. I don't care if it really mixes a little bit with the other colors, because that only makes it look more natural. I add a little bit more burnt sienna to it, the white, to see if that looks better, because I was kind of trying this out. The base of that tree trunk is dark, so I wanted to add a little bit more darkness to it. So I kind of keep adding, keep subtracting. If I need to get more of a highlight, I can then still add to it. So kind of playing around with those colors until I get something that I'm pretty happy with. And for now I left that. Then I had one more of those sunshades to paint in, so I did basically the same thing as the other one. First made the base kind of dark, that same darkness that I used for the tree trunk, and then I started putting in some highlights with some white, and I believe I also add some burnt sienna to it again, but trying to mostly get the highlights of that with a little bit of white. Then again, another beach chair, side view this time, very easy, 2 lines, a little bit of white at the bottom, and then a little bit of shading here and there on it. And for all these things, I'm pretty much using the same flat brush. It's that number 5 flat brush. Probably is the majority of my painting is done with that. Then I'm using again that mix of the sand color of ochre and white mixed with some dark blues to get that shading of the palm tree there. Added some white accidentally there, but then I just spread it out and it looks fine, so I left it the way it is pretty much. Now this was the steps there and those little boards. I started with a little bit of burnt sienna and white, and I wasn't quite happy with that, so I started adding a little bit more of the dark blue to it to get some more darker planks in there. That really wasn't quite what I wanted either. I did need to put a little shading, so I used that for that, and then I add a little white over top of that again, and that was a little closer to what I really wanted to see. So I then did just a very light white with a little bit of that ochre in it, and then again add a little shading here with that by adding a little bit of blue in there. Here adding a little bit more shading as well, and then fixing those boards a little bit, adding a little bit more of the burnt sienna to it, and then fixing here that the shadow of the tree going up the stairs there. And the painting doesn't have to be exactly identical to the reference image. The reference image is called a reference because that's all it is. You can paint parts that you like, you can leave out things that you don't like or that you didn't want to use. I decided not to paint a whole bunch of those chairs because it's just a lot more, and I felt it kind of like took away from the lady and her chair. I wanted her to be kind of separate and stand out a little bit more so that she became a little bit more of a focal point. Those are just, creative decisions you can make. For the leaves there, I used mostly the dark blue, some yellow, sometimes a little bit of the ochre, I believe, as well. Definitely some of the whites, and try to get that variation again, not just one color green, but variation of the darks and the lights, get some highlights in there. Trying to really yeah, go for that variation of darks and midtones and lights and highlights just to make it a little bit more interesting. Again, it doesn't have to be identical to the photo, but you want to use it as an example of where the darker areas and the lighter areas go. Now there's some palm trees in the back there as well. Didn't paint all of them in detail. Again, just kind of more going for an impression than for a detailed painting like that. Trying also to follow the direction that that those leaves grow. They want to hang down because they're heavy, so just trying not to have them paint them so they're kind of standing up when they're not. And yeah, there I added a bunch more blue to make it a little darker in the background and to get more of a variation, fixing here and there a few highlights. Adding also a little bit more shading in the back there where all those trees are. And honestly, you can't really see all the details there, so I just kind of make it, randomly green. Add a few more like interest here, like I said I was going to do on the sand and then I also wanted to fix around the tree, the leaves of this palm tree, so I didn't have any white areas left over where I'd left it white before. I guess in the beginning I could have painted the whole sky blue and then just painted the tree over top of that, but I didn't. So this is how it is. So I gotta do a little bit of fixing there. Add maybe a little bit of blue in between where you can see through the tree leaves a little bit. Fix here and there a little bit of the rest of the sky where I didn't like it or I thought it wasn't smooth enough, or I don't know what I was thinking there. So adding a little bit more white here and there, just basically fixing all those little details that I notice. Add a little bit of shading with the burnt sienna to those chairs. A little bit more burnt sienna there. Then add some burnt sienna to the sand just to give the impression that it's not all exactly the same color, because we know that sand has a lot of shading and highlights. So just trying to put that in there. Add also a little bit of water that is kind of like coming up on the sand onto the beach. Just a little bit of the blue. Adding a few little white highlights for like the heads of any waves. Then I noticed there were some more highlights on the leaves, as I'm using basically just white for that. And we're getting towards the end basically. Put my name in the bottom, and there we go. That is the painting done. This is basically what we're going to do, and so have fun with that.